Part 49. Adorable Baby, The Miracle Doctor is So Awesome. Author, 955. Chapter 481. A crowd of spectators gathered under the stands, all shouting and cheering for their relatives and friends. Zongzi is a very filling food, and it is easy to accumulate food if you eat too much. In order to prevent people from overeating, Shenyazi also specially prepared many Zaishi pills. However, as stated in the rules of the competition, once you take Zaishi pills, it is equivalent to giving up the competition. There are only a handful of real big eaters. Most people's appetites are standard for ordinary people. They can only eat a dozen or so of them before they can't hold them any longer. At this time, the referee next to you will give an admonishment: don't hold on. If you can't eat, don't eat. It's you who will suffer if you break it. However, some people still refuse to admit defeat and feel that they can still eat. The result was that he had to go up vertically, come down horizontally, and be carried to the nearest hospital for treatment. The rice dumpling eating competition is in full swing, and here at Tianzhou Lake, the dragon boat race is also getting underway. The shouts and shouts were so loud that they shook the sky. When the time came to 9 o'clock, Shenyazi, as the city lord, went up to the highest stage before the competition. He didn't say anything nonsense, and his voice spread with spiritual power. The first dragon boat competition in Mocking City is official. Start. Followed by a heavy blow on the big drum. Several dragon boat teams that had already been ready to go rowed out in a hurry. The passion and speed soared, making Shenyazi's blood boil with excitement. At the end of this unforgettable day, countless lights lit up in the city, illuminating the streets and alleys. In addition, the Tianyuan Empire does not have curfew rules, so people who still have unfinished entertainment are reluctant to leave and continue to linger and have fun in the lively night market. This night, Shenyazi and Gu Switting spent the night in the Tianzhou on Tianzhou Lake. The stars in the sky are shining, and the boat is rocking on the water. This is an extremely gentle and warm night. When everything was over, Gu Switting kissed Shenyazi's eyelids that were about to close, held her tightly in his arms, and the two fell asleep together. The two of them stayed together every day, and they lived like a fairy for a few days. On this day, Gu Switting suddenly said, "Zhizi, I want to return to the imperial capital." Shenyazi was stunned for a moment, and felt a huge hollow feeling in his heart. Why are you leaving all of a sudden? She thought he would always be here with her and the children. Gu Switting held her on his lap and kissed her cheek. If I don't go back, when can I marry you? I can't wait to put on that wedding dress. He means. Are you going back to prepare for the wedding? Shenyazi tilted his head, but happened to bring his lips to his cheek. A smile broke out on his lips, and his eyebrows shone. Well, so we won't be separated for a long time this time, at most 2 months. Can be together. As they were about to be separated, the two became more and more sticky, and even Qingbao couldn't take any attention away from them. After a night of depression, when Shenyazi opened his eyes the next day, Gu Switting was no longer there. The bed next to me is already cold. Only a little bit of his scent is left. Shenyazi felt sad for a while, feeling as if half of his body was missing. As soon as I left, I started to miss him. Actually, so is Gu Switting. As soon as he returned to the palace, he couldn't help but send her a message: "Zhizi, are you awake?" The message was responded to quickly. In the photo stone, Shenyazi appeared sitting on the head of the bed. The quilt was only pulled to his chest, and his snow-white round shoulders and arms came into view unexpectedly. Gu Switting's eyes burned instantly. He regretted it. He should. What should it be? He quickly stopped. Lest you run back to her on impulse. Her delicate voice came from the shadow stone. I just woke up, have you arrived? Gu Switting's throat rolled. Well, I just arrived too. After chatting for a while, Shenyazi stretched his body and said, "Okay, It's time for me to get up. You can go and do your work. Gu Swiding took a breath and stared at her stretching movements several times. Shen Yizi put on his clothes, walked to the window, raised his face and let the bright sunshine of May fall on his face. After bathing in the sun for a while, she went downstairs with full energy and light steps. Gu Swiding is preparing for their wedding, and she can't slack off. There are still many things waiting for her to do. Handling the affairs of Mocking City in the morning, refining elixirs and drawing talismans in the afternoon. Let's play with Qingbao and the others for a while in the evening, and after they fall asleep, restock the shelves in the grocery store. She recently added a new shelf, but the goods always sold out quickly. After that comes cultivation. No matter what, you can't stop practicing. The aura in the space was several times richer than before. She felt more comfortable practicing, and her cultivation had reached the peak of qi refining. She was only one step away from reaching perfection. But even when she reached perfection, she couldn't stop. Although his realm is suppressed by the 9 dragons covering the sky formation, the spiritual energy refined into his body truly belongs to him. Although it is suppressed and cannot be used to its full potential now, when the formation is broken down in the future, the benefits will be apparent. In addition to these daily tasks, she also has several more important things. One is to collect 10 artifacts within a year, and now she has collected 4. To be precise, it should be 4.5. After all, Tianzhou is also an artifact, but currently she only has the right to use Tianzhou. Because Tianzhou only recognized Qingbao as its owner. Shen Yizi planned to raise it for a while, wait until its spirit regained consciousness, then communicate with it carefully, let it change its identity as its owner, and wait until 1 year was up before letting it reunite with Qingbao. We have a clue about the 5th artifact, but there are still 5 pieces left. These days, Shen Yizi has been taking the time to read county annals and various supernatural novels from various places, looking for clues about the artifact. It's just that the progress is very slow. The second thing is Gu Swiding's devilish poison, which has always been a worry for her. She has confirmed with Yang Shengqing that he can refine the soul cleansing pill. Taking the soul cleansing pill was an alternative to find a way to completely eliminate the evil poison in his body. Although it is a backup, there is currently no clue of the real solution, so we can only try our best to find all the medicinal materials needed to refine the soul cleansing pill. The last one is to find the other 8 nodes of the 9 dragons covering the sky formation. Although she has the dragon hunting disc given by Master Qingbao in her hand, this matter cannot be completed overnight, and it requires traveling all over the world. So you must make all preparations in advance and handle everything at hand properly. Yang Shengqing sent a message from the backstage of the store. The rice dumplings you gave me before were very delicious, especially the ham rice dumplings and bacon rice dumplings. It seems that this great master of alchemy is still a salty rice dumpling party member. And the implication in these words can be said to be obvious. She sent another large package, and attached a box of 3 bottles of Xiaoshi pills. Zongzi is easy to accumulate food, so you can't eat it as rice, boss. Yang Shengqing, it doesn't matter. I can fully absorb it after a few days of doing the exercise. She forgot that this person was no ordinary person. That's good. You asked me before if I knew about the artifact. I have reviewed my past memories in the past few days, and I actually discovered the whereabouts of an artifact. Adorable baby, the miracle doctor is so awesome. Author, 955. Chapter 482. Qingquas, who refers to the Tianshan Mountains, which is the location of the artifact provided by Yang Shengqing to Shen Yizi. She was surprised at first. How could Yang Shengqing know about Qingque Prefecture? She always thought he was from another world. It turned out that he was also in the Tianyuan world. Shen Yizi was surprised, and immediately had a sudden thought. Yang Shengqing said, I haven't been out for decades, and I have no intention of going out for the time being. Shenyazi, is this great master of alchemy actually an out-and-out nerd? Okay, if the boss wants to go out, he must come to my place as a guest. I will cook a big meal for you. Yang Shengqing was very moved by this, but when he thought about having to deal with strangers after going out, he gave up the idea. Since you can eat delicacies made from crystal exquisite buns at any time without going out, why bother yourself? Hello, Grandmaster Yang is not only a nerd, but also a sufferer of social phobia. Shen Yizi made a series of arrangements, took Qingbao and Yuanbao, and boarded a flying boat to Qingke Prefecture. At the same time, deep in Qingmang Mountain, in front of a cliff. The cliff looked as if someone had carved it out with a sword. It was flat and smooth. Suddenly, the cliff made ripples like water, and an exquisite three-story boat emerged from it. On the boat on the upper floor, there are two young women, one with an oval face, wearing a snow-green gauze skirt, with a gentle and elegant temperament, named Luo Jun. The other one has an oval face and a pointed chin. She is also a delicate beauty, but her domineering temperament brings her appearance down a bit. Her name is Kong Shuning. The two are senior sisters, both from the Shuiyu sect in the secret realm of Yaokai. Lu Chuan just came out of the secret realm of Yaokai. Thousands of years ago, when the aura of Tianyuan realm became increasingly thin for some reason, some sects and families cut off their strength and hid in secret realms. Shuiyu sect was one of them. Yaokai secret realm was once one of the secret realms under the jurisdiction of Shuiyu sect, and it was also the largest. It was enough to house thousands of people from Shuiyu section. After taking refuge in the secret realm, everyone in the Shuiyu sect concentrated on cultivating things and did not care about worldly affairs. However, the Shuiyu sect is a sect dominated by women. As time goes by, the yin becomes stronger and the yang declines, leaving no successors. So the sect leader decided to send people to the outside world every once in a while. One was to find suitable disciples and add fresh blood. Women would enter the sect, and men would pass on the section. Secondly, it is to understand the situation outside and see if the spiritual energy has been restored. Generation after generation, the original sect master has passed away long ago, but this rule has been passed down. The time is also fixed, with a trip out of the country every 10 years. This mission is not popular because the aura concentration in the outside world is far inferior to that in the secret realm. It would be a sin to go out. Furthermore, after so many years of development, the Yaokai secret realm seems to be evolving into a small world. The rules of the Great Road are becoming more and more perfect. In the outside world, once you reach the perfection of qi refining, you cannot go any higher. At most, you can only reach the early stage of foundation building. But in the secret realm, the ceiling of the realm is the golden elixir stage. So for the people of Shuiyu sect, the outside world is simply a barbaric land. To ask them to give up the opportunity to practice in the secret realm and run outside is tantamount to being sent to the frontier. The sect can only increase the reward of the task one at a time. Luo Jun was originally an outer sect disciple. Later, because he fell in love with Kong Shuning, the beloved daughter of the great elder, he was able to become his disciple. The resources at hand were much better than before, and his cultivation level gradually improved. But she has been stuck at the peak of qi refining for several years and has never been able to break through. She thought that she might take advantage of this trip out of the country to practice and maybe encounter some opportunities. Another one, I also want to get rich rewards after the mission. I accepted this task. As for Kong Shuning, my mother, it's true. Didn't she just trample on one of the second elder's elixirs? As for sending me to this useless place. In this ghost place, the spiritual energy is so thin that it seems like there is no one at all. My power, the law cannot function. Luo Jun comforted her softly, junior sister, the master is also doing it for your own good. The second elder treasures her elixirs the most. The Huixinko you trampled on was one that she had carefully raised for many years. She had already planned to use it for refining. As for the medicine, if the master had not stopped him, the second elder would not have given up. Master asked you to leave the country, ostensibly to punish you, but actually to protect you so that the second elder cannot take action against you. Otherwise, think about it, if you continue to stay in the secret realm, with the stingy and old-fashioned temper of the second elder, I'm not sure how I'll make you suffer. As soon as Kong Shunning thought about it, the depression between his brows dissipated a little. Okay, everyone is out, let's walk around first and see if there's anything interesting. Kong Shunning steered the building boat in one direction. The big boat was given to her by the great elder so that her precious daughter would not suffer even if she went to a wild land. As for Luo Jun, he simply followed suit. Hey, there is a city here, let's go down and have a look. Coming out of Qingmang Mountain, Kong Shunning saw Mocking City below, became interested, and lowered the building boat. Thinking of how the group of mortals below who had never seen the world would see him coming out of the building boat, Kong Shunning's eyes almost burst with pride. Who would have thought that when the building boat dropped to a certain height, it was suddenly ejected by an invisible force. He even rolled a few times in the air. If the building ship had not opened its protective shield, Kong Shunning and Luo Jun would have been thrown directly away. This person who bounced off the flying tower ship was naturally the defense formation of Mocking City. Before Shen Yizi left, he deliberately updated the formation and placed a large number of spiritual stones in the formation. The updated formation integrates defense, attack, trapping enemies, cleaning and other functions. As long as the supply of spiritual stones is available, there is nothing to worry about, even a few golden elixirs. Shen Yizi also set a condition: within 300 meters of the city, except for her and Gu Switting, no one else has this right. In Kong Shunning's heart, the spiritual energy outside was so thin that it was almost non-existent. Let alone things like the city defense formation, even in the later stages of Qi refining, she might not be able to find it. She despised everything outside from the bottom of her heart. Who would have thought that as soon as he came out, he would be so devastated? After Kong Shunning stabilized his body, he looked at Mo Ching Cheng below with great anger. How dare you stop her and fly the boat away from the building, how hateful! In her mind, the world should revolve around her, and anyone who doesn't go along with her will deserve to die. Kong Shunning just wanted to take a deep breath and blast the broken city below into rubbish. The ship is a high-level magic weapon. In addition to flying and basic protective functions, it can also launch attacks. Luo Jun knew what she was going to do at a glance. Junior sister, this is not good. What if someone is hurt? You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Adorable baby, the miracle doctor is so awesome. Author, 955. Chapter 483. It's just an injury. They're just a bunch of lowly ants, what's the big deal? Kong Shunning didn't care, with a complete disregard for life on his face. Luojun lowered his eyes and did not stop him. Xiao San sensed it when the city defense formation bounced the building ship away. Before leaving, Shen Yizi handed the city defense array into his hands, allowing him to have full control. He also left a lot of spiritual stones and told him, "We don't cause trouble, but we are not afraid of it. If anyone dares to provoke, teach him to be a good person." When the cannon barrels on the building ships were aimed at Moqing City, Xiao San took a preemptive strike and quickly clicked on the formation plate. Several spiritual cannons set up on the city wall were all aimed at the building ships in the sky. The spiritual cannon makes no sound when fired. When the cannonball hits the building ship, it explodes with a bang. Before Kong Shunning could launch, the entire ship was blown to pieces. If Luo Jun hadn't reacted quickly and pulled her in time to avoid it by stepping on the flying sword, the two of them would have been blown to pieces like the spaceship. The shells exploded high in the sky, and when they reached the bottom, the sound was much quieter. People in the city looked up and thought they were setting off fireworks. Kong Shunning was hit by the explosion, his energy and blood were shaken, he covered his chest and vomited a mouthful of blood. She was completely confused and could hardly believe what she saw. The ship was blown up like this? Didn't it mean that even a high-level chi-refining monk is hard to find in the outside world, so they can run rampant without any scruples? Why did she encounter such tough trouble in the city defense formation as soon as she came out? Fortunately, Luo Jun was still clear-headed and knew that it was not advisable to stay here for a long time, so he took Kong Shunning and was about to leave. It's a pity that it's too late. As soon as she turned around, she saw Xiao San, Xiaoming, and others, who were stepping on the big puppet bird. At a glance, no one has a cultivation level lower than the 6th level of Qi refining. Not long ago, Xiao San broke through to the 6th level of Qi refining. Xiaoming and others obtained the resources provided by Shenyazi, and most of them made breakthroughs. Among them, Xiaoming has the highest level of cultivation, reaching the 9th level of Qi refining. He has a single spirit root of the thunder system, and his qualifications are very good. In the past, it was only because the resources could not keep up that he delayed his improvement. Now with a lot of resources provided by Shenyazi, his level cannot be improved in minutes. Already. With Xiao San in the middle, Xiaoming and others formed a circle, blocking the way of Kong Shunning and others. Luo Jun's expression changed, and he couldn't help but feel extremely regretful. After weighing the strengths of both the enemy and ourselves, she realized that the two of them were no match for those on the opposite side. If she leaves Kong Shunning, a fool who only causes trouble, it will be easy to escape with her peak chi-refining strength, but can she leave her behind? Cannot. The building boat is the master's magic weapon. It was blown up. The master must have noticed it. As long as she can hold on for a while, they will definitely be rescued when the reinforcements sent by the master arrive. With all this thought in his mind instantly, Luo Jun stood on the flying sword and saluted Xiaoming, the most cultivated person, junior sister, and I really didn't mean to offend, and I hope some fellow Taoists can forgive me. As soon as she said these words, Xiaoming immediately sneered, no offense? Ha ha ha, it's so funny. You are directly bombarding our Moqing city. Is this an unintentional offense? What about intentional offense? Do we have to kill all the people in the city? Luo Jun is also a goddess-like existence in Shuiyu section. Regardless of how rich this goddess is, at least she is an existence that is held up by many brothers. She didn't expect that even though she had lowered her attitude so low, this man would still refuse to let her go. Kong Shunning jumped out, aren't you okay? My building ship is a high-level flying magic weapon, and it was blown up by you. I haven't settled the score with you yet, but you came to us first. Let me tell you, I am Shuiyu sect from the Yaokai secret realm. You'd better be polite to me, otherwise, I'll make you walk around without food. Xiaoming scratched his ears and smiled mischievously, oh, I'm so scared. I've never heard of any nonsense about Shuiyu section. Xiao San raised a hand and said, no need to talk nonsense to them, just grab them and throw them to Xiao Xian. Xiaoming immediately attacked Luo Jun. Luo Jun originally thought that since his cultivation level was higher than Xiaoming's, he wouldn't suffer any loss in a fight. Who knew that Xiaoming was actually a thunder type with extremely powerful attack power? And she only has water and wood spiritual roots, which do not grow with attacks, and were even defeated by Xiaoming. The more she fought, the more frustrated she became. The mission introduction provided by the sect was simply wrong. They also said that there is not even a high-level chi refining person in the outside world, so you can do whatever you want. What is the result? Let alone do as she pleases, she can't even decide whether her life can be saved. While Luo Jun had to control the flying sword, he also had to face Xiaoming's wild offensive. There was also Kong Shunning, who only talked about being tough but actually couldn't help at all and was holding him back. He soon couldn't resist it and had to flying towards the ground. Xiaoming followed closely behind. Kong Shunning took the opportunity to throw a fire talisman at him. Humph, this bumpkin from the outside world has probably never even seen a talisman and seal script, right? However, she was wrong again. She lost the talismans and seals, and Xiaoming also lost them, and they lost more and more powerful ones than she did. Once on the ground, Luo Jun made a defensive posture, which was actually a message to Kong Shunning: "Junior sister, didn't master give you the soul capturing whip? You will take the opportunity to take action later. Okay, senior sister, look at me." Luo Jun fought with Xiaoming, while the rest of the attacked Kong Shunning. Finally got a chance to defend against foreign enemies. The boys in the team were very excited and rushed to take action. They didn't think there was anything wrong with using more to bully the less. Kong Shunning had a good idea. She whipped out a whip and brought out a soul. Unfortunately, due to her lack of practice, her whip was messy. Not to mention hitting people, she almost hit Luo Jun several times. Luo Jun was already exhausted from dealing with the situation, and he had to dodge the soul enchanting whips from his teammates in fear, which made him exhausted both physically and mentally. As expected, I am not afraid of opponents who are like gods, but I am afraid of teammates who are like pigs. Xiao San couldn't stand it any longer, so she stepped forward and grabbed Kong Shunning's whip. Kong Shunning was overjoyed. This man was really asking for his own death. Unexpectedly, he touched the whip, but nothing happened. How is this going? How did she know that Xiao San was a puppet and had no such thing as a soul at all? When Xiao San twisted her arm, she was still puzzled. "Let me go, you bastard, my mother will not let you go." Xiao San directly put a talisman on her forehead, as if dealing with a zombie. In an instant, the whole world became pure. On the other side, Xiaoming also captured Luo Jun. In Mocking City, there are two cells. Those who commit minor crimes will be sent to the water prison, the mirage that lives in Tianzhou Lake, which will weave one horrific nightmare after another for the prisoner. Adorable baby, the miracle doctor is so awesome. Author, 955. Chapter 484. In the endless cycle of nightmares, the prisoners will cry bitterly and change their minds. After they are released, they will definitely turn over a new leaf and never commit crimes again. If the circumstances are serious, they will be sent to the wooden prison, that is, to the immortal vine. If the mirage is a mental punishment, then the immortal vine is a corporal punishment. It will the life out of the prisoner's body according to his crime. If the sin is serious, just it up and use it as fertilizer for the fairy vine. Xiao San once conducted such a public execution. A criminal who raped a woman and tortured her to death was sucked into a human by the fairy vine within a few breaths. The execution was over before everyone watching the execution had time to react. The scene at that time was completely silent. Since then, no one in the city dared to commit any crime for a long time. Now, Kong Shunning and Luo Jun were thrown to the fairy vine by Xiao San. Suck half of it. The immortal vine branched out into two thin vines, wrapped the two of them into a green cocoon, and then absorbed half of the vitality in their bodies. The secret realm of Yaokai. The great elder who was in seclusion to enter the golden core stage suddenly spat out a mouthful of blood. She is the owner of the tower ship. When the tower ship was destroyed, she, the owner, naturally suffered the backlash. And she gave the building to Ning-er. So, something happened to Ning-er. The elder didn't care about seclusion and hurriedly nursed back to health. He managed to suppress the internal injuries, then left the secret room and sent a message to his husband. Soon, a middle-aged man with a tall figure and a jade-like face walked quickly. "Master, what's wrong?" Deng Tong, a middle-aged man, asked with a worried look on his face. Quickly, leave the country and go find Ning, or something may have happened to Ning. Grand Elder Master Kong grabbed his arm. Okay, I'll go right away, don't worry. After appeasing the elder, Deng Tong returned to his cave, but he summoned his eldest disciple Zhang Xie and asked him to go out and bring Kong Shunning back. Zhang Xie was hesitant, but he still respectfully agreed and set off after making some preparations. As for why Deng Tong did not leave the country in person, it was because his cultivation was in the late stage of foundation building. When such a cultivation reaches the outside world, he will be suppressed immediately, and all he can exert is his peak chi refining strength. He went there again, what's the benefit? After Zhang Xie came to the outside world, he felt the thin spiritual energy, sighed in his heart, and followed the tracking talisman all the way to Mocking City. The three characters Mocking City are not engraved on the top of the city wall, but on a tall stone tablet. The three words Mocking City on the stone tablet are majestic and powerful, and even have a hint of true meaning, shocking the hearts of those who watch. Deng Tong stood under the stone tablet and looked at it for a long time. Compared to Kong Shunning and Luo Jun, he was much smarter and low-key. After entering the city, he did not rush to find Kong Shunning and the two of them, but wandered around the city. The more he walked around, the more surprised he became. When he saw the Taoist bell and Tianjing mirror outside Minjiao Villa, his surprise had already risen to the point of shock. If he read it correctly, these two items should be spiritual weapons. Spiritual weapons, even the sect only has a few of them. Where did this Mocking City come from? He felt that the aura around Minjiao Villa was the strongest in the whole city, so he decided to walk in. But he was stopped by the stone lion at the door. Please buy a ticket, you can't enter without a ticket. This stone lion gave Zhang Xie another big surprise. But seeing that everyone around him was accustomed to it, he could only suppress his surprise and did not show it. Could it be that 10 years have passed and the spiritual energy of the outside world has revived? But when he came all the way, he didn't feel it. Zhang Xie came to the nearby ticket booth and touched his body and found that he had no money at all. In the sect, there is no need for silver at all, only sect contribution points and spiritual stones are used. I didn't expect that I would be stumped by a mere yellow and white thing now. Zhang Xie walked away silently. He walked around and found a lot of novel food and gadgets. A group of children gathered in front of a square box with a few wheels on the bottom. A woman stood behind it. She took the copper plate from the children's hands, and then took out the cold money from the box. The box was handed to them. The children opened the box, took out a popsicle, and licked it deliciously. It is already mid-May, the height of summer. How is that ice made? That woman is obviously just immortal. Zhang Xie walked over, and the woman greeted him warmly. Brother, would you like to buy an ice popsicle to cool down? I have many varieties of popsicles here, and they are generous in portion, ice cold and sweet. They only cost 3 cents each. Zhang 11 said, open it and let me take a look. He looked into the box and found that there was a formation carved inside, which was somewhat similar to the constant temperature formation, but with some changes. Under the influence of the formation, the temperature inside was very low, and a layer of ice formed on the 4 walls of the box. Seeing him looking at it for a long time, the woman became a little unhappy and said, Brother, do you want to buy it or not? If you don't want to buy it, you should tell her earlier, so as not to let the cold air in her box escape. Zhang Xie asked, where did you get this box? The woman closed the lid of the box and said, why do you ask? A few more children came over to buy popsicles, and the woman hurriedly greeted them. Zhang Xie turned around and left, found a shop, pawned a jade pendant with good water quality on his body, and started to try new things with the money he got. As for Kong Shunning, the people on the left and right are still there. Wait until he has had enough shopping before going to save her. Kinkwas who refers to Tianshan Mountain. Shen Yizi looked at the straight mountain peaks reaching into the sky and thought that this mountain really deserves the name of pointing to the sky. She parked the Tianzhou halfway up the mountain without confiscating it, and used the Tianzhou as a house to live in. When you arrive at your destination, the first thing you should do is to have a good meal. Shen Yizi specially made more and sent some to Yang Shengqing, telling him, I have arrived at Zhishan Mountain, where should I go to find the artifact next? Yang Shengqing, aren't you already here? It means Tianshan Mountain. Shen Yizi didn't understand the meaning of this. What does it mean to refer to Tianshan Mountain? Wait a minute, does he mean that Tianshan Mountain is a divine weapon? God, how is this possible? After thinking about it, why is this impossible? The previous sun-quenching bowl itself was not as big as a small island. Now here comes another one as big as a mountain, what's so strange about it? Her suspicion was confirmed by Yang Shengqing. The location of Tianshan Mountain was originally a sword. The name of the sword was Guanjiao. There were many people who wanted to take the sword as their own, but they failed. Over time, the Guanjiao sword was gradually buried by dust and rocks. If you want to take away the Guanjiao sword, and there is no other way except to make it recognize you as its master. But I have to remind you that the Guanjiao sword, as a divine weapon, cannot be conquered so easily. No one has been able to succeed for thousands of years, so you must be mentally prepared. Adorable baby, the miracle doctor is so awesome. Author, 955. Chapter 485. Shen Yizi followed the method taught by Yang Shengqing and penetrated the mountain layer by layer with her spiritual consciousness. Then, she saw a sword. As soon as the divine consciousness came into contact with it, he entered a vast and boundless world. This world is filled with yellow sand, desolate and quiet, with countless swords buried in the sand. This is the conscious world of Guanjiao sword. Everything here is actually fake, all transformed from the Guanjiao sword. All she had to do was find the Guanjiao sword inside, and then trick it, convince it to recognize her as its master. Her consciousness took on the shape of her true body in this world and fell to the ground. At this moment, the swords that were originally buried in the yellow sand suddenly rose into the sky from the sand and shot toward her with a whoosh. The murderous spirit is fierce, and thousands of swords come out. If this scene were a special effect in a movie, she would definitely applaud. Unfortunately not, the person pointed at by Ji Unfeng now is herself. Shen Yizi has no weapons and cannot run. Who in the world of Guanjiao sword can outrun the swords it transformed? Furthermore, Yang Shengqing told her that a swordsman should move forward unstoppably and be invincible. Even if he cannot defeat him, he should not give in. Otherwise, the Guanjiao sword would not kill her. Shen Yizi could only use the shattering star fist that he practiced every day. With one punch, the sword turned into smoke. However, there were too many swords, and she couldn't hit them at all. She didn't know how many holes were poked in her body. Being injured here consumes all her consciousness. Soon, she felt extremely tired and was forced to retreat. When his spiritual consciousness returned, Shen Yizi felt a splitting headache. This was a sign of excessive consumption of his spiritual consciousness. She lit a stick of incense, lay down directly and fell asleep. Sleeping is a good way to restore consciousness. When he woke up, it was already dark. Shen Yizi went into the space to play with the two children for a while, had dinner with them, opened the backstage of the grocery store, and told Yang Shengqing about the situation of entering the world of Guanjiao sword. Yang Shengqing, it seems that in order to conquer the Guanjiao sword, the first thing is to have a strong spiritual consciousness. I have an enlightened tree here, which can make people recover their spiritual consciousness faster. You can take it? Shen Yizi was not polite to him and just accepted it. The Kaiming tree is more like a potted plant than a tree. It is very small and exquisite, with leaves like willow leaves, slender and green, and exudes a light and refreshing fragrance. Taking a breath, My head, which was still a little dull, suddenly became much clearer. Sure enough, it can speed up the recovery of spiritual consciousness. Spiritual power can be increased by meditating, but there is no way to improve spiritual consciousness. It can only increase step by step as cultivation level improves. She has a spiritual consciousness that is beyond her own realm because she has been a human for 2 lifetimes, and her soul is much stronger than that of ordinary people, and the strength of her consciousness is linked to her soul. If you want to cultivate your spiritual consciousness, you can only increase it slowly through constant consumption and recovery. This method is actually not a secret, but not many people do it. Without him, for monks, if they exhaust their spiritual consciousness, it will be like becoming blind or deaf, which will cause great uneasiness. Moreover, the process of exhausting one's consciousness is not an ordinary pain. Shenyazi was naturally afraid of pain, but she was even more afraid of losing the God Emperor Pearl. The God Emperor Pearl is her golden finger. Without the golden finger, how can she survive? So the artifacts must be collected together. She will never let go of the Guanjiao sword in front of her easily. Isn't it just a matter of constantly consuming spiritual consciousness and then restoring it? She's afraid of a ball. Shenyazi meditated next to the enlightenment tree for a while, and his consciousness completely recovered and even increased slightly. If the original spiritual consciousness is as thick as a finger, then this strand is as subtle as a hair, but it cannot be ignored. Shenyazi entered the world of swords again, and thousands of swords were fired. This time, she learned the lesson from the previous time. Instead of being stupid enough to touch it with her fist, she transformed into a hammer, the star-shattering hammer. This is the world of consciousness. The Guanjiao sword can transform into a desert and a sword here, so why can't she transform into a hammer? After giving it a try, it worked. With a hammer in her hand, it was much easier to deal with those swords. She swung the hammer and danced around her so tightly that not a single sword could break through. But in the end, he was defeated by the exhaustion of his spiritual consciousness. Shenyazi held his head that was about to explode. The pain was so painful that he wanted to hit the wall, so he hurriedly meditated next to the enlightened tree. The skills were running through her body over and over again, and the spiritual energy was forming a mist around her. The branches and leaves of the enlightened tree bathed in spiritual energy have become greener and greener. Its leaves trembled lightly, and the fragrance it exuded was like wisps of light smoke that sank into her body. Shenyazi's painful expression gradually returned to calm. During such masochistic consumption and recovery, Shenyazi's consciousness rapidly grew. And she can persist in the world of swords for longer and longer. I don't know how many days have passed, but Shenyazi finally broke through the rain of swords. The original desert instantly dissipated and turned into a dark cliff. There are countless swords stuck on the cliff. Those swords, some long or short, wide or thin, complete or incomplete, were densely inserted on the cliff, making people feel a silent but solemn and heavy power. The previous level tested the strength and adaptability of spiritual consciousness, so what is being tested this time? Climbing up? Shenyazi walked towards the cliff. Mocking City. Zhang Xie stayed in the city for more than 10 days. He visited all the streets and alleys and tasted all kinds of novel food. However, he did not feel bored. On the contrary, he felt that there were many interesting things in the city. Place. The first one is the Yanhai Tower in Minjiao Villa. The richness of the books in it was even inferior to that of the Shuiyu sect where he belonged. There are many secrets of cultivation among them. It was actually put out in such a big way by the rumored Master Shen for everyone to read. Originally, he was ecstatic about this and wanted to copy out the exercises he had seen. If he could bring these back to the sect, he would surely gain a lot of contribution points. Unexpectedly, after he came out, he would not be able to learn those skills silently no matter what. Not only could he not put them on paper, but he could not describe them orally. Moreover, the large amount of content he originally memorized based on the monk's good memory became blurry after he came out of the villa. What he could remember clearly in the end was only the amount that ordinary people could memorize. He couldn't help but be secretly frightened. It seems that there must be some restrictions set up in this Yanhai Tower. And he has never seen this kind of restriction even in the sect. He felt more and more that Master Shen was unfathomable, and he became more and more afraid to act rashly. Now that 10 days have passed, it is time to visit his two good junior sisters. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Adorable baby, the miracle doctor is so awesome. Author, 955. Chapter 486. Zhang Xie went to see Xiao San, and after receiving permission, he was led by a boy to the immortal vine. Nowadays, the life of the fairy vine is very nourishing. From time to time, people come to worship it with chickens, ducks, fish, and other living animals. The main body of the fairy vine has grown several times thick after eating it. Its whole body is as green as jade, and every leaf is like a fine jade carving. It looks really beautiful. As soon as Zhang Xie arrived, he recognized that this was the fairy vine that had disappeared long ago. Where the fairy vine is, there is often no grass growing and no living things, because the vitality of those living creatures will be sucked out by the fairy vine. However, the fairy vine here subverted his cognition. When will the fairy vine be able to coexist peacefully with humans? How do the medicinal herbs and spiritual plants around here grow so luxuriantly and still live well? Zhang Xie's mind was filled with doubts. This is it, the boy said and left. Zhang Xie stepped forward and saw several green cocoons hanging on the fairy vine. They were full of people. To be precise, they were criminals who had committed crimes. Kong Shunning and Luo Jun are inside. After the two of them were half drained, they couldn't even speak, let alone what the fuss was about. They were so weak that they could only lie powerlessly in a small green cocoon. Fortunately, this is a medicine field, and a spirit gathering array has been set up. The spiritual energy is rich, and they will absorb the spiritual energy, so there will be no serious problems. At first, Kong Shunning thought about taking the opportunity to practice and break free from the vines to escape, but as soon as the spiritual energy was absorbed into his body, it was sucked away. Why do you need to practice this? She simply gave up on herself and just lay in the green cocoon. On the other hand, Luo Jun, although his spiritual energy would be sucked away, still insisted on practicing day and night. After all, the weather is getting hotter and hotter now. If you practice, the spiritual energy will circulate in the body and it will be cooler. Every few days, someone comes and feeds them Bigo pill. They won't be hungry and they don't have to urinate. Besides practicing and sleeping, they have nothing to do. When they heard Zhang Xie's voice, the two of them thought they were hallucinating. Kong Shunning opened his eyes weakly and burst into tears when he saw the person outside the green cocoon. Elder brother, Weavuo, why did you come here? Luo Jun looked touched. I knew someone would come to save us. However, Zhang Xie said, I can't rescue you yet, but I feel relieved to see that you are still well. Kong Shunning. Luo Jun. After seeing the people, Zhang Xie comforted them and left. Leaving the two junior sisters behind were messy in the wind. In fact, even if he could save Zhang Xie now, he would not save him. He knew the temperament of the two junior sisters, especially Kong Shunning. Once they were rescued, they would inevitably cause trouble for him, and he had not yet met Shen Shuang. As for the Lord, we cannot let them ruin his own affairs. Refers to Tianshan Mountain. The world in the sword. Shen Yizi finally climbed to the cliff, but found that there was nothing above and in front of him. The cliffs haven't disappeared either. Does this mean that she failed this test? Shen Yizi is a little crazy. What exactly is the Guanjiao sword going to be tested for? Let me explain it at least. When her consciousness was exhausted, she had no choice but to withdraw. Meditate, practice, and restore your consciousness. Shen Yizi opened his eyes, walked out of the cabin, came to the deck, and looked outside. The clouds and mist are billowing and ever-changing. She took out the shadow stone and sent a message to Gu Switting. Chatted with him for a while, then went into the space to hold Qingbao and Yuanbao and inhale their lovely and invincible faces for a while. Her depressed mood was greatly relieved. At this time, the two little guys were detained in the space by her. When they saw her, they were busy trying to get out. Shen Yizi took them out and repeatedly told them not to run around. He also released Xiao Si and Xiao Wu and asked them to watch them. At this time, she received a message from Xiaosan. The secret realm of Yaokai. Shuiyu sect? Don't let them go yet, dig out more information from their mouths, and wait until I get back. Xiao San replied yes. Shen Yizi calmed down and re-entered the world of swords. It is still the same cliff, and there is also a sword on the cliff. This time, she was going to change her strategy. Since climbing up the cliff doesn't end this level, just try to pull out all the swords. So, Shen Yizi embarked on a long journey to draw his sword. She came out in the middle and accidentally saw Qingbao holding a short sword in his hand, fighting Yuanbao. Unlike girls who like to play house and play with dolls, boys often like to dance with knives and guns. She was afraid that they would hurt herself and each other, so she prepared blunt wooden swords for them, but the one Qingbao was holding was a genuine sword. Sharpened. Even though it looks like a child's toy, she just saw Qingbao cut off the wooden sword in Yuanbao's hand with one strike of his sword. The wooden swords she prepared for them were made of gold and sandalwood. Their texture was tight and tough, comparable to gold and iron. How could it be cut by an ordinary sword? Qingbao, where did this sword come from? Shen Yizi walked over and took the sword from Qingbao's hand. Picked up. At this moment, she saw two very ancient characters on the hilt of the sword. For some reason, her heart skipped a beat when she looked at these two words, and she had an inexplicable intuition. She copied these two characters and sent them to Yang Shengqing. What are these two characters? Yang Shengqing, Guanjiao, have you successfully made Guanjiao sword recognize you as its master? No, my son picked up a sword with the word Guanjiao engraved on it. Yang Shengqing. This series of ellipses and greetings clearly revealed his mood at the moment. Shen Yizi is the same as him. Crystal exquisite bag, is there a second sword named Guanjiao in this world? Yang Shengqing, no. Which sword dares to have the same name as the divine weapon Guanjiao? Crystal exquisite bag, so, this rusty dagger that looks like a toy that I picked up is the famous artifact Guanjiao sword. Yang Shengqing, this is normal. Before a treasure meets its favorite owner, it usually hides itself and prevents others from discovering its true identity. Shen Yizi quit the chat and looked at the dagger in his hand carefully. Mother, give it back to me quickly. Qingbao weighed his feet to take the dagger back. My dear, this sword is very dangerous. If you are not careful, it will hurt you and Yuanbao. It is better for my mother to keep it for you. Qingbao retorted loudly, no way, he just said he would protect me. Guang Guang. Shen Yizi narrowed his eyes. She knelt down in front of Qingbao and asked, Qingbao, who is Guang Guang? Qingbao glanced at Yan Yujian and said, Guang Guang said he couldn't tell others. Shen Yizi touched his head, is mother someone else? Qingbao tilted his head and thought for a moment, no. So you can tell your mother. Adorable baby, the miracle doctor is so awesome. Author, 955. Chapter 487. Guang Guang is the sword in my mother's hand. She says it is very powerful. If anyone bullies me in the future, she will help me kill him. Shen Yizi's face suddenly turned cold. He was afraid of scaring Qingbao, so he smiled quickly, Mom, I have something to say to Guang Guang. You go and play with Yuan Bao first, okay? After Qingbao left, Shen Yizi gave Guanjiao Jianjian a hard knock. Do you know how old Qingbao is? You actually instilled in him the idea that it is forbidden to fight or kill. While she was working tirelessly to find it in the world of swords, it was good that it had already found Qingbao on its own. This magical sword, why is it so scheming? Whoever dares to disobey me, I will kill him until he does. Whoever dares to bully me, I will kill him until he can no longer bully me. A young voice from the second class sounded in Shen Yizi's mind. This is what my previous master taught me. Is there anything wrong with my words of wisdom? I'm afraid this girl's previous owner wasn't a middle-aged boy who was living day and night, right? Shen Yizi wished he could spit on it. What a wise saying. Bah! If you dare to say such murderous words in front of Qingbao again, believe it or not, I will reinvent you. Guanjiao sword, recreate me. Woman, you are too whimsical. I am a divine weapon dash. Before he finished speaking, Shen Yizi had already thrown it into the ever-burning cauldron. The phoenix true fire was arranged, and it didn't take long for the Guanjiao sword to burn until it roared. I was wrong, please let me go. Guanjiao Jian lowered his head and begged for mercy. Humph, it really does have to be tough. Shen Yizi took out the red-hot Guanjiao sword and threw it into the sun-quenching bowl to temper it again. The Guanjiao sword felt sour, and it let out a howl of pain from time to time. By the time Shen Yizi took it out, it was completely wilted and no longer dared to scream at her. Shen Yizi looked at the sword that had become bright and sharp, and knocked it, and a clear buzzing sound sounded. Have you recognized Qingbao as your master? Not yet. Guanjiao Jian's voice was no longer as arrogant as before, and was a little wilted. Shen Yizi's lips were slightly raised, but his tone was still cold and strong. Very good, you accept me as your master, and I will give you your freedom after 1 year, how about that? Guanjiao Jian hesitated and struggled for a moment, then thought of how he had been tortured by the Changran cauldron and the sun-quenching bowl before, and agreed. The moment the master recognition process was completed, Shen Yizi breathed a sigh of relief. Very good, the 5th artifact, get it? Shen Yizi told Yang Shengqing the good news. With the artifact in hand, there was no need to stay here any longer. Shen Yizi took the 2 little guys back home. Although there is a city lord's palace in Moqing City, Shen Yizi still prefers to stay in her original small building. It was evening when she came back, and she landed the Tianzhou directly on the roof of the small building. Early the next morning, Shen Yizi finished a set of punches and called Xiao San over. She wiped the sweat from her face and asked, "What's going on with those people from the Shuiyu sect?" After receiving her instructions, Xiao San fed Kong Shuning and the 2 truth pills, and asked a lot of information from their mouths. When Shen Yizi asked, he told everything. Shuiyu sect, there are 3 supreme elders in the Jindan stage, several in the foundation building stage, and hundreds more in the remaining qi refining stage. It is really a big force. But in this outside world, no matter whether you are in the golden elixir stage or the foundation establishment stage, you will be suppressed to the qi refining stage. What is she afraid of during the qi refining period? No matter how many people come, they can't break through her defensive formation. In this case, how could she let Kong Shuning go? As soon as these 2 people came out, they directly bombarded their city of Mocking without taking the lives of the people in the city seriously. If she hadn't updated and strengthened the city defense formation before leaving, she might have killed or injured many people. Since Kong and Luo didn't take other people's lives seriously, don't think about how seriously others took their lives. Shen Yizi was about to give Xiao Xian an order to the 2 people in, when Zhang Xie came. He came at a good time. Shen Yizi then calmed down and waited to see what he would say. Zhang Xie was led in by Kun San. When he saw Shen Yizi in the main room, A flash of surprise could not be suppressed in his eyes. He did not expect that the Lord of Moqing City was actually a girl with such a heavenly appearance. Moreover, he couldn't see through her cultivation level, he only felt that there was a faint coercion about her. He bowed respectfully and said, "I've met fellow Taoist Shen." Shen Yizi returned the greeting and said, "Please sit down." Kun San served snacks and spiritual tea. Jiang Xie tasted it, and a strange color flashed in his eyes. Such a spiritual tea that is full of energy is extremely rare even in the secret realm of Yaokai. Thousands of years have passed, and the resources in the Yaokai secret realm have been continuously consumed. Now, even supplying hundreds of people from Shuiyu sect is not enough. I think back then, their Shuiyu sect was a large sect with thousands of people, but now it has declined to this point. The outsiders, whom they had always looked down upon, had already drank high-quality spiritual tea and ate snacks made from spiritual materials. These days, in addition to being familiar with everything in Moqing City, he also deliberately inquired about the situation in other places in the Tianyuan world, but he did not hear any news about the recovery of spiritual energy. The spiritual energy in the outside world is still as thin as thousands of years ago, and even worse. Thin. Is the reason why Mocking City is like this all because of this Lord Shen? Is it possible that she has some rare treasure in her hand? It was precisely because of this guess that Jiang Xie always wanted to meet Lord Shen. When he really saw it, his thoughts became more and more determined. Fellow Daoist Shen, in the next chapter, I have taken the liberty to come here this time for the sake of my two junior sisters who don't know their importance. Here, I would like to apologize to friend Daoist Shen on their behalf. Jiang Xie stood up and bowed deeply to Shen Yizi, apologizing sincerely. However, Shen Yizi didn't appreciate it. Fellow Daoist Jiang, do you think an apology is useful? If Mocking City didn't happen to have a city defense formation, all the people in the city would have turned into ghosts. Therefore, Kong Shunning and the two of them must die. Kun San, see you off. Jiang Xie did not expect that Shen Yizi would be so ruthless and determined to kill the two junior sisters. Luo Jun, that's all. If Kong Shunning died, wouldn't his wife tear him to pieces when he returned? Fellow Daoist Shen, please wait a moment, I wonder if I can have a few words with you alone, Jiang Xie said sincerely. Shen Yizi muttered for a moment, follow me. She took him to her study room, waved her hand and set up a soundproof barrier, go ahead. Jiang Xie took out a bag of spirit stones and said, fellow Daoist Shen, here are 3,000 spirit stones. Is it enough to redeem my two junior sisters? Shen Yizi smiled, 3,000 spiritual stones. Do you know how many spiritual stones were burned when those spiritual cannons on the city wall blew up your junior sister's ship some time ago? Jiang Xie had a bad premonition in his heart, and sure enough, the next moment he heard Shen Yi know a number, 30,000. Since you want to use spiritual stones to redeem your two junior sisters, that's fine, 300,000 spiritual stones per person. If you can get the spiritual stones within 3 days, I will let them go. How about that? Adorable baby, the miracle doctor is so awesome. Author, 955. Chapter 488. 300,000 spiritual stones to redeem a person, you are clearly robbing the spiritual stones. Jiang Xie almost blurted out these words. But now that the person is in her hands, it's not like she can do whatever she wants. Jiang Xie couldn't help feeling aggrieved. I think he is in Shuiyu sect, but he is a leader of the younger generation. Wherever he goes, he is not respectfully called senior brother. As a result, when he got outside, he was hampered everywhere. He should really stay in the secret realm and practice. Jiang Xie took a deep breath and said, I'm going to collect the spirit stones. I hope fellow Daoist Shen can keep his word. Of course, but fellow Daoist Jiang, you have to hurry up, there are only 3 days left. Shen Yizi felt like he was the villain in a novel when he said this, and he couldn't help but feel happy. Jiang Xie left Shen's house, returned to the inn, closed the door, brought the water basin on the shelf to the table, and started to use their Shui Yu Sect's secret technique, Shui Yu mirror technique on the water in the basin. This is a spell created by the founder of their Shui Yu section. It can be cast wherever there is water. After the spell is successfully cast, the water surface will turn into a water mirror, and the caster can communicate with people far away. Communicate. This spell is easiest to cast by people with water spirit roots. Not only the Shui Yu mirror technique, most of the Shui Yu sect's techniques and spells are of the water type. The water spirit roots are mostly owned by women, so the Shui Yu sect has become a sect with more women than men. Although things are getting better now, men's progress in learning water magic is not as fast as that of women. At this moment, Jiang Xie was sweating profusely when he used the water moon mirror technique, but it was successful at least. In the water basin, the figure of his master Den Tong appeared. Master! Xie, can Ning and the others be rescued? Jiang Xie shook his head. This disciple is ashamed of his master's instructions and failed to rescue the two junior sisters. Den Tong's face changed slightly. What's going on? Please tell me in detail. Jiang Xie naturally would not tell anything about his wandering around after arriving in Mocking City. He only said that he had been looking around for information since he arrived, and finally found the place where the two junior sisters were imprisoned, but that Shen Yizi is not willing to let the two junior sisters go so easily. He wants me to use spiritual stones to redeem him. 300,000 spiritual stones for each person. Den Tong, she is really a lion's mouth. Didn't you tell her that you are from the Shui Yu sect? Chapter Xie, of course I said it, but Shen Yizi didn't take our Shui Yu sect seriously at all. Master, I suspect she has some kind of rare treasure in her body. Den Tong's eyes flashed. Oh? How can I see it? Jiang Xie explained all the strange things in Moqing City. At first, I thought it was the spiritual energy from the outside world that had revived, so it was nothing strange for Moqing City to be like this. But then I inquired about it and found that other places and there is no difference between what the senior brothers and sisters discovered years ago, so the trouble lies with Shen Yizi. The defense formation of Mocking City, the spiritual stones in her hand, and the large amount of elixirs and plants planted in the city, these are not things that ordinary people can possess. Den Tong, even if it's not a rare treasure, it's possible that she discovered a secret land rich in resources. If she can get it? The master and apprentice looked at each other, their eyes full of ambition. You continue to stay in Mocking City, I will rush over right now. Okay, master, I'll wait for you. Shen family. After Jiang Xie left, Shen Yizi took the photo stone that had been recording the conversation in the house, played it again, and smiled. She came to Immortal Vine with the photo stone and showed the contents of the photo stone to Kong Shunning and Luo Jun. Even Kong Shunning couldn't help but gasp when he heard the figure of 300,000 spiritual stones. Are you crazy about spiritual stones? Shen Yizi smiled. Is 300,000 spiritual stones a lot? I thought your Shui Yu sect was very wealthy, couldn't you even afford 600,000 spiritual stones? You, Kong Shunning was so angry that he almost couldn't breathe. Humph, my parents have always loved me, how could they not show it to me? Just wait and let me go then. She looked at Shen Yizi and was already thinking about how to get revenge on her when she got out. Shen Yizi looked at the malice almost overflowing from her eyes and smiled slightly. Is it possible to let Luo Jun go, Kong Shunning? There was no way she was going to leave here alive. She would not leave such a lawless trouble to herself who regarded human life as an ant. At the other end, Luo Jun looked a little gloomy. She doesn't think she is worth 300,000 spiritual stones. Really? How about I make a bet with you? If your senior brother raises 600,000 spiritual stones in 3 days to redeem you, I will let you go. If he only redeems one person, then both of you will be free. Want to leave? Kong Shunning's eyes widened. You don't mean what you say. You said 300,000 spirit stones for one person. She knew very well that there was a high probability that the senior brother would not spend 300,000 spiritual stones for Luo Jun. Luo Jun lowered his eyes with a calm expression. Besides, I won't make a bet with you. Shen Yizi, it's not up to you. The next day, Den Tong came out of the secret realm of Yaokai and came to Mocking City according to Zhang Xie's guidance. As soon as he entered the city, he felt that the spiritual energy here was much stronger than elsewhere. Maybe ordinary people just feel that living here is particularly comfortable, and they don't know why. Only as a monk can you see the way here. Den Tong looked at those ignorant mortals and sneered in his heart. These mortals were lucky. He and Zhang Xie met at the inn. The master and apprentice entered the room and set up a soundproof barrier. Master, what are your plans? Zhang Xie poured Den Tong a cup of spiritual tea. Den Tong didn't want to drink the water from the outside, but he smelled the refreshing aroma of tea. He picked it up and took a sip, and a strange color flashed in his eyes. Master, you should believe what I say now, right? Any inn in the city sells excellent quality spiritual tea, and Shen Yizi still has many good things in his hands. Thinking of the large amount of treasures in Shen Yizi's hands, Zhang Xie's heart became hot. Den Tong put down the teacup. After I came here, although my cultivation has been suppressed, my consciousness still retains the level of the foundation building stage. Shen Yi knows that he is a person from the outside world, and his cultivation is at most perfect in refining qi. It won't exceed the foundation building period. Zhang Xie's eyes lit up. Master, you mean dash. Den Tong coughed lightly and said, take me for a ride. The master and the apprentice started wandering around the city. Den Tong's surprise became more and more intense. When he saw the Taoist bell and the heavenly mirror in front of Minjia Villa, his surprise turned into shock. Master, these are the two spiritual weapons I told you about. Den Tong said slowly, no, they are not spiritual weapons, they are magic weapons. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Adorable baby, the miracle doctor is so awesome. Author, 955. Chapter 489. Magical weapons are classified according to their grades: magical weapons, spiritual weapons, magic weapons, spiritual treasures, Taoist weapons, fairy weapons, and divine weapons. In this era where the civilization of cultivating immortals has declined, it is already a great thing for a monk to own a magic weapon, and there is no need to think about spiritual weapons at all. Even Den Tong only has one high-level magic weapon in his hand. Zhang Xie also only has an intermediate sword. But now, they saw two magic weapons in a small city in this wilderness. How could this not shock their hearts? The master and apprentice looked at each other, their eyes flashing with blazing light, and then they quickly looked away. What they didn't know was that they were like two bugs entering the laboratory, and their every move was actually under Shen Yizi's observation. Den Tong, who thought he knew enough about Mo Ching Cheng, decided to meet Shen Yizi. This time, Shen Yizi didn't meet them at Shen's house at all, but made an appointment at a tea house. In the box, the two parties met politely. After sitting down, Den Tong was not in a hurry to say anything about redeeming Kong Shunning and the two, but started talking to Shen Yizi. Ask questions such as, who is Daiyu Shen's teacher? Do you have any problems in cultivation, and so on, acting like a cordial teacher. Shen Yizi thought it was quite interesting, so he started chatting with him one after another. Den Tong wanted to get something out of her, so why didn't she take the opportunity to inquire about the secret of Yaokai? For a while, the two seemed to be having a great time talking to each other. Den Tong felt that the heat was enough, so he brought up the idea of redeeming people. He took out a storage bag with 300,000 spiritual stones in it. Shen Yizi asked deliberately, "Why are there only 300,000 spirit stones? Do you only plan to redeem one person? Who to redeem?" 3 consecutive soul torture questions made a smooth person like Deng Tong, who was good at concealing his emotions, couldn't help but show a hint of embarrassment. "Fellow Daoist Shen, 3 days is really too short. I can't collect 600,000 spiritual stones at the moment. Can you be accommodating for a few more days?" Deng Tong refilled her cup of tea in a personable manner. It's a pity that his method is of no use to her. The 3 days promised are 3 days. Isn't fellow Daoist Deng deliberately trying to embarrass me? Tell me, who do you want to redeem? Shen Yizi took an exquisite empty teacup and turned it around in his hand. Deng Tong was silent for a while. "My little girl has been naughty since she was a child, and she has caused such a big disaster this time. This is all my fault as a father. I also asked fellow Taoist Shen to let her go. When I get back, I will definitely teach her a lesson and make her a new person." As for Luo Jun, not a word was mentioned. Shen Yizi smiled and said, "Okay, I'll ask someone to bring Kong Shunning here." This time, the master and apprentice were not given a chance to get close to the immortal vine. When Kong Shunning was brought over, she saw her father and senior brother and immediately felt that she had found someone to support her. He threw himself into Deng Tong's arms and started to complain in front of Shen Yizi. Some people are just so stupid that they can never see clearly the current situation and the situation. Deng Tong scolded her sharply, "Ning er. This time it was you who was indeed at fault. Fellow Daoist Shen is willing to let you go. It's because of her magnanimity. Why don't you thank me quickly? Let Kong Shunning thank Shen Yi? It would be better to kill her. I don't. Why should I thank her? I've suffered a lot these days, and it's all because of her." Deng Tong gave Shen Yizi an apologetic look. Shen Yizi smiled slightly. "Fellow Daoist Shen, I've wasted a lot of your time, so we don't have much time to stay. I'll take this evil girl back." Deng Tong stood up and raised his hand to Shen Yizi. As he turned around, the spiritual consciousness that had been ready to attack turned into a sharp blade and attacked Shen Yizi's sea of consciousness. In his fantasy, his consciousness was far stronger than Shen Yizi's, and the blow was caught off guard. Shen Yizi would definitely fall to the ground on the spot, and he could take the opportunity to catch her. When the time comes, Shen Yizi will have no choice but to let him round it up and flatten it. It's a pity that imagination is beautiful, but reality is hummed. Before the smile on Deng Tong's lips could bloom, Shen Yizi fought back fiercely. His consciousness turned into a big hand, defeating Deng Tong's consciousness, and then went deep into his sea of consciousness, stirring it up wantonly. Deng Tong's spiritual consciousness is at the same level as his, at the late stage of foundation building, but Shen Yizi, although his state is only at the peak of qi refining, his spiritual consciousness is close to the golden elixir stage. This is all thanks to the training in the sword world some time ago. Through the masochistic consumption and recovery, the strength of her consciousness has been rapidly enhanced. How could Deng Tong have expected that her spiritual consciousness was far higher than her own level? Her consciousness was disturbed on the spot and she had a splitting headache. She screamed and fell to the ground holding her head, even grabbing the ground with her head. "Dad, what's wrong with you? Shen Yizi, what did you do to my dad?" Kong Shunning still couldn't figure out the situation, so he was yelling at Shen Yizi. Zhang Xie, who knew the inside story, was now pale and sweating. Especially when I saw the smile on the corner of Shen Yizi's mouth, I was even more horrified. The master is in the late stage of foundation building, and with the strength of his spiritual consciousness, he was unable to hurt her at all, and was actually hurt by her. This woman is really evil. Zhang Xie, dominated by fear, turned around and wanted to jump out of the window and escape. It's a pity that when I jumped out of the window, I was knocked back by the invisible barrier. Looking at the senior brother who almost fell down when he landed on the ground in a panic, Kong Shuning's sense of crisis was finally aroused. Shen Yizi cast a spirit-forbidden spell on Deng Tong and Zhang Xie to seal the spiritual power in their bodies to prevent them from becoming monsters again. As for Kong Shuning, it makes no difference whether he is sealed or not. Take them to the immortal vine and lock them up. Shen Yizi called Xiaoming in and said to him. Xiaoming bundled the three of them, put them on his shoulders, and strode away. After one night, it is expected that Deng Tong and others also recognized the reality. Shen Yizi came to them and said, "Yesterday, fellow Daoist Deng's behavior was really unfriendly and made me very angry. I thought about it all night and felt that I could only express my anger by killing someone. You four masters and disciples, who should I kill?" Deng Tong forced a smile and said, "Fellow Daoist Shen, killing people can easily accumulate negative consequences. You must never kill someone to vent your anger. Otherwise, your state of mind may be affected in the future and you will no longer be able to be promoted." Shen Yizi snorted coldly, "You are still trying to give me a psychological hint, Deng Tong. It seems that you didn't suffer enough yesterday." Immediately, his consciousness turned into a whip and whipped towards him fiercely. Deng Tong didn't expect to be seen through by her at a glance. He was about to defend himself, but he was suddenly hit by the blow and screamed in agony. Zhang Zihe and Kong Shuning looked at Shen Yizi as if they were looking at some kind of devil. Luojun lowered his eyes to hide the smile in his eyes. However, she soon stopped laughing. Shen Yizi gave each of them 4 wooden sticks with their 4 names written on them. "Now, vote and name the people you think should be killed." Adorable baby, the miracle doctor is so awesome. Author, 955. Chapter 490. No one moved. Shen Yizi chuckled and said, "If you don't choose anyone, then I'll have to choose one at random." She gestured to take out a sign with a name written on it from the sign tube. "Let's see who is this lucky guy who is about to go to the Western Paradise." 4 people. Kong Shuning couldn't sit still. What if she was hit? She doesn't want to die. She took the lead in handing out the sign, "Here you go." Shen Yizi took it and took a look, and was not surprised. There are 4 sticks, 3 of which are written Luojun. Luojun's heart sank when she saw Shen Yizi looking towards her. Although she had expected the situation, when it really happened, she still felt uncontrollable panic, disappointment, and anger. Shen Yizi took Luojun away, and the other 3 people could not help but breathe a sigh of relief. However, before leaving, Shen Yizi turned around again and said, "If you don't want to die, quickly contact the people in the sect to bring spiritual stones to redeem you. 500,000 spiritual stones per person." Looking at the dull expressions of the 3 of them, Shen Yizi left with Luojun in a good mood. She brought Luojun back to the Shen family. In the study, Shen Yizi pointed to the chair by the window, "Sit." Luojun looked at her, "Didn't you say you wanted to kill me?" Shen Yizi asked her, "Do you think you deserve to die?" Luojun was so angry that he laughed. Who in the world would think that he deserved to die? The worst thing to die is the little Kong Shuning. If it weren't for her good parents, would she have survived to this day? She has been killed so many times. Since he was going to die anyway, Luojun didn't bother to pretend anymore and vented his resentment and hatred towards Kong Shuning in front of Shen Yizi. Shen Yizi said leisurely, "Let me show you something." She took out the photo stone and showed her the conversation scene between Deng Tong and Deng Tong in the tea house box. Luojun's face was expressionless. She had already thought that they would not use 300,000 spiritual stones to redeem her. But she keenly sensed a hint of life from Shen Yizi's action of showing this to her. "You showed me this just because you want me to be dissatisfied with the sect so that I can be used by you," she sarcastically said, "then you are really wasting your efforts. As long as you don't kill me, I will be yours from now on, man. I will do whatever you ask me to do." Shen Yizi, who was preparing a lot of rhetoric. Is this girl so unruly? Luo Jun saw her doubts and explained calmly, compared with fate, everything else is not worth mentioning. Shen Yizi was silent for a moment, but had to admit that she was right. However, after all, there are some things in this world that are more important than life. Shen Yizi, since you have decided to surrender to me and work for me, don't you have any indication? Luo Jun was stunned for a moment, then realized what he was doing and swore an extremely vicious inner demon oath. If you are disloyal to Shen Yizi, you will be unable to advance to the animal realm after death. Shen Yizi, although the oath is witnessed by heaven, I still feel that it is not appropriate. Why don't you split a ray of your consciousness and give it to me? If you hand over a ray of your consciousness, it is equivalent to handing your life into her hands. Because once she has a delusional thought, Shen Yizi will immediately notice it and take her life with a single thought. Luo Jun, who had no hesitation in swearing a demonic oath, was silent now. But in the end, she endured the severe pain that caused her soul to tremble, and separated a ray of consciousness and gave it to Shen Yizi. Because if she disobeys her at this time, she will die immediately. If you hand over a ray of spiritual consciousness, you can survive for a while. Shen Yizi was still very satisfied with her choice. She flicked a healing pill and said, "This is a pill that restores spiritual energy." Luojun caught it accurately and drank it immediately. After meditating on the spot for a period of time, the spiritual energy in her body has completely recovered, but the efficacy of the elixir is still there. If it is completely absorbed and refined, the spiritual energy in her body can be improved further. However, when she thought that this was in the outside world, the ceiling of a monk's realm was the perfection of qi refining, and only a handful of people could break through to the foundation building stage when the outbreak occurred. She became frustrated. However, Shen Yizi shouldn't be willing to be trapped in the qi refining period for the rest of his life, right? If she follows her, maybe she can go further? Luo Jun thought about a lot of things in his mind at the same time. When he opened his eyes, Shen Yizi was no longer there. She pushed the door open and smelled a strong aroma of meat, and her stomach growled. Speaking of which, she hasn't eaten for several days. Although Bigo pill can satisfy the hunger, it only makes people feel not hungry, and there is no sense of satiety like eating food. This made her very uncomfortable without Anidia. Shen Yizi was setting the dishes, and when he saw her he greeted her, "You sit down first, we have the last dish of vinegar fish." Looking at her gentle and homely appearance, Luo Jun couldn't help but be stunned for a moment. Is this the same female devil who wanted to beat and kill them before? Luo Jun had just surrendered to her, and his life was still in her hands. How could he dare to sit there and wait for her to serve the food? "Shall I help too?" Shen Yizi followed her. She uses a whole grass carp to make vinegar fish. It is raised in a space lake. It is full of spirit and has no impurities. The meat is white and tender. Simmer it in the clear soup for a few minutes and it will be done. Put the thickened soup into the pot and pour it over the fish. There is only a little vinegar and a little soy sauce in this soup, which is light and slightly soaked into the fish body. Sprinkle some minced on top and the dish is ready. Looks simple, but it is not easy to master the heat, and it tastes even better. Fresh, tender, clear, and beautiful. Luojun likes to eat light food, and this vinegared fish dish really appealed to her appetite, and she stretched out her chopsticks several times. Qingbao asked, "Mother, who is this sister?" Luojun, who was eating fish, almost got stuck. Shen Yizi scooped up a bowl of mushroom and tofu soup for her. "This is Sister Luojun Luo, my new subordinate. From now on, she will help my mother with things, just like Sister Kun-san." "Oh, Sister Luo." Qingbao picked up a lion's head and handed it to her in the bowl. Luojun watched his movements and was very worried that the ball would fall, so he quickly stretched out the bowl. Qingbao smiled at her, "My favorite meatballs, Sister Luo, you can eat them too." Luo Jun also smiled back, "Okay." After dinner, Shenyazi and Luo Jun returned to the study. Tell me about Yaokai Secret Realm and Shuiyu section. Luo Jun was not born and raised in the Shuiyu sect, but was brought back when he was 8 years old and was found to have spiritual roots by a disciple who went abroad on a mission. Start as an outer disciple. Yaokai Secret Realm has been developed by Shuiyu sect for thousands of years. By a few decades ago, the resources were on the verge of exhaustion, and the concentration of spiritual energy was far less than before, and was even decreasing year by year. It is conceivable that the treatment of the disciples within the sect will not be very generous, so the competition among the disciples is very fierce. As an outside disciple with no relatives and no connections, Luo Jun was a new arrival, so the days at the beginning were really difficult.